Okay, so previously I've shown you step by step how to make the little button, but today I'm going to take you through its big brother, the big button, which is a much more full replica of the one of the TV show. I'm not going to take you through step by step exactly how to build it like I did before, because a lot of the construction and a lot of the important steps are exactly the same. So I recommend you watch the little button video, and this video will just show you what's different. So I guess the first thing that's different is, of course, this the big button's got a screen for the Raspberry Pi. It's got a camera if you want to use that, although at the moment the software doesn't use it, and it's got some feet and a slightly different case, which looks more realistic. So we just take away the feet for the moment, and just let the screen drop out. You should see that inside we have a Raspberry Pi screen with the Raspberry Pi mounted on the back, and the wires connecting up to the GPIO, just like exactly the same wiring as we had with the small button. The one thing different with this button is you may choose to connect the camera module, and in which case that will go in there, and fasten it down, and then we'll the whole screen slides into the case like that, and then if we flip it over, there are screw holes to line up on the back of the screen, and using a screwdriver you can fix it all together. I won't do that just now. So there's 4 screws here, here, here and here. Notice the mountings for the lights for the back of the case have a hole in them, and that hole's there to give access to the screw holes. So it's important that when you're gluing the lights on, you still leave access to those 4 holes. Let's not get that tangled up. If we try to look in the top of the case, so the top of the case where the button mechanism is, this is exactly the same construction as in the small button. So it's still 2 3D printed parts, a vacuum formed dome, and a foam spring, and metal contacts, ideally copper contacts in here. Also, you'll notice looking down here there's the camera modules in there, and that's just held in place by glue gun glue, or any other glue you like, although hot melt glue does work really well. Looking at the side of the case, you'll see a set of holes, finger joints on both sides, and they hold in this board that's in the middle, and this board with the 4 ovals on is there to hold on the lights. So just like in the small button, there's a set of LEDs up in the dome, but there's also 4 lots of 4 of each colour, so 4 lots of 8 LEDs mounted on strips of aero board behind these windows. The windows themselves are made of some sort of translucent plastic of your choice. This came as packaging for something I bought, so I thought it was quite good. I cut it to be the right shape to cover the back window, and then I cut it roughly in half. And the way I put this together is I use double-sided sticky tape along each edge. I'll just do one edge for the time being. Actually, I'll do both to show it in action. So I put double-sided sticky tape over both edges. Here I'm using quite a strong double-sided sticky tape. I guess you could use other glues, but the reason I like the tape is because it's not permanent, even though the tape itself calls itself permanent double-sided sticky tape. In this case it isn't. application. And with that tape in place, I'm then able to press the window into place, and that will stick. But if I ever need to do any work on the button, then it will also just pop out. So I guess if once this is completely finished and I don't feel like I'm going to do any more work on it, I might choose to replace that with some stronger glue, but I think actually that works quite well. Talking of kind of leaving things open for maintenance, I found it really useful to leave off these side pieces, which do go on to cover up the button mechanism. At the moment they're not glued in, and they hold on just fine. It's a nice tight finger joint, but that means if anything goes wrong with the camera module or the button mechanism, I've still got access to that top part of the button. Okay. So then the final piece to show is the feet. This is a 3D printed part again, and it matches up with this laser cut piece. And the way this works is, and you can do this with the, in fact I'll put the window back in to kind of at least put it in on one side to give an idea of how possible this is. So once it's all together and the screen's screwed in, the window's in place, this is the final thing you need to do to put it all together. The power lead, again, you might want to connect that up to the Raspberry Pi. I'll just connect part of it for the time being if I can. There we go. So then what you do is you put the power lead through the middle hole, and then you put the piece of wood up into this space above the lights, like that, and then it's able to drop down into place to cover the back hole. And I'm not sure if you saw before, but this board has got two nuts epoxied on, although you could use hot melt glue again or whatever your favourite glue is, but I used epoxy in this case. So yeah, that drops into place there, and then again put the lead through the legs, through the feet, and there's I get some couple of bolts which go through the bottom of the feet, and you need to match them up with the holes in with the nuts and screw them up. Normally the window in place, and it's not the easiest thing, it's not the fiddliest thing, but then that means that the whole unit's all held together, and it all just works. So yeah, pretty much I guess that's how most of the construction happens. Constructing a case, very similar to with the small button. Just take the window out for a moment. I guess the construction order is pretty much to start by, let's think about this. So you've got a few things on different planes. So first of all, you've got the front section, which is pretty straightforward. You probably want to glue the camera in before you do anything else, and the mounting for the screen is actually made of 3 additional layers of ply. So there's 2 spacing layers and a layer with the screw holes in. And the spacing layers in the kit are made, they're not full rectangles, they're made of angle pieces which need to be glued on and stacked up. That's just to save wastage of the wood. So you want to stack them up a layer at a time, glue them in, maybe clamp them on, and then finally clamp on the section with the holes in. Then once the front piece is finished, you may want to push in the bridge that the sponge fits on, this piece here, into the front, having the front facing down. Of course, at this point, your Raspberry Pi won't be connected. I probably should disconnect mine. So with that in place, you can then put on one side. So the sides start here and curl around to here, and they've got this really cool living hinge in the corners to give this nice round effect. So it's really quite amazing. You laser cut a perfectly rigid piece of ply, and it becomes really floppy and bendy in the living hinge area. So yeah, that wraps around here. Then you might push in the light bar into that, and then wrap around the other side. Again, pushing it into the light bar, pushing it home on the bottom piece, and then finally put the top on. Could be one. Again, just like with the small button, once that I would glue all that up. I don't bother gluing either the bridge for the foam sponge or the bridge or the light bar, and I just let them float around because they're really tight fit anyway. And I don't put the top piece in, which is got the hole in for the button, until much later on in the process. So I would glue up all around here, all around the bottom. I'd push home the light bar and the sponge support, and then let that set up. Then, as I say, I'd then construct the button piece at the top. These side panels can be pushed into place, but I wouldn't glue them till much later in case you need access. And then once all the case is constructed, you can start gluing in the lights for the back panel. You can start gluing together the button itself. And again, the button construction is exactly the same as the small button. Yes, and then with all that in place, you can then put in the window, put on the feet. Obviously the Raspberry Pi needs to be in first, and then yep, it comes together, and that's your button. So I think most of the steps of construction that are maybe trickier were covered in the video for the small button. I've unfortunately I didn't make a video as I was going along with the big button, but hopefully this video's shown the important differences and the important construction